Movies and gaming are intertwined like never before.
What is this place?
And Hollywood finally seems to be nailing down the formula for what makes a good video game movie. Looks like Hollywood is satisfied with both catering to die-hard fans as well as casual consumers as a whole, being very financially successful across the board, especially in recent times. But of course, the road to get here has been long and honestly possibly a little confusing. But through long-standing trial and error, Hollywood and the consumer are finally getting a zen state. Think back for a moment. Back to when you picked up a controller for the first time. Maybe you sat down in front of a screen and started mashing buttons on an arcade box. And suddenly, bam, you're somewhere else. Maybe you were racing go-karts, screaming get over here, flinging a digital ball around, or even slashing grass in the land of Hyrule. All while playing on a television that weighs more than a fridge. Whatever your history, gaming offered a special experience. A feeling, a sense of accomplishment. And although it was brought to you by a bunch of ones and zeros, it sticks with you. Memorable. Forever. And you could argue, yeah, it's not real. It's all video generated. But your experiences are. And that matters. And think about it. Today, in the year of our Lord, 2026, over 3.2 billion people around the world are playing video games in some form or fashion. That's 40% of humanity. And the industry generates close to $200 billion per year. That's a lot of dollaroos. Let that sink in. $200 billion. That's more than the global music industry. It's more than the global film industry. Gaming isn't just a hobby anymore. Gaming is the entertainment economy. It's not just the physical games themselves anymore either. We got streaming platforms, movies, merchandise, art and music to go along with everything. But how did we get here? And where are we going? Just how have we, the consumer, the gamer, shape this industry, and what power do we have to continue shaping it? Realistically at this point, I think people running the $200 billion ship know something about us on a granular level that they never had before. Algorithms, viewing, and purchasing data over time have peeled back the curtain for how our brains work. There are now calculated methods to understand what motivates us, what rewards we like, and what keeps us coming back. Hollywood and similar industries are building entire ecosystems off this thing. Games, content, film, merchandise, and everything in between. And of course, that begs the question, is this being used against us, or can we leverage this for good? Now guys, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I'm not here to tell you that video games are bad or consuming what you like is leading us to a state of corpo wasteland. Never feel guilty for loving what you love. I love games, and if you're here with me right now, I think you do too. Instead, let's take a deep dive. Let's see exactly how this industry works, where the money flows, why Hollywood started caring so much about gaming, and what is really happening every time you reach for your wallet inside of a movie theater. Because knowledge is power, and I think the more clearly we can see the system we're living in, the better equipped we are to shape it. Power to the players. Now, for most of gaming's first 30 years, the business and purchasing model was arguably straightforward. You walk into a store, you pick up a box, you look it over, and you make a decision.
I have Super Mario Brothers 2.
Buy it or set it back down. Either way, you go home and play and hopefully have a blast. You make lasting memories. It was simple, clean, the transaction value was obvious, and the relationship between the consumer and the creator was honest. You got what you paid for. End of story. Now, fast forward to today. In many ways, that model has been systematically dismantled over the past couple of decades, and it's been replaced with something that looks vastly different when we look at it closely. Today, the majority of global video game revenue does not come from the initial sale of the game. It comes from what the industry calls a live service. Ongoing, evergreen games that are either free to download, cheaply purchased, but they generate an enormous amount of revenue through an endless stream of optional purchases made inside the game itself, i.e. microtransactions. We learned through recent times this was initially manufactured by none else but ooh. But that's a topic for another time, possibly another video. But hey, today we got cosmetic items, character outfits, weapon skins, season passes, battle passes, limited time event content, and so on. We get virtual currency deliberately designed to make a true cost feel abstract, maybe not even real. Now, arguably, the loot box, aka gambling, is perhaps the most controversial of these mechanisms, and for good reason. A loot box comes in many forms, but is essentially a digital package purchased with real money that grants a player a random chance or selection of in-game items. Items may be purely cosmetic, affecting only how your character looks, and or they may affect the gameplay itself in some form. Either way, the whole thing is essentially a slot machine. You pay, you pull, you receive an unpredictable reward. And guess what? You don't need to be in Vegas or even 21 to play. Mom's credit card hates this one trick. Guys, this is what we call a variable reinforcement principle. This makes gaming neurologically compelling, and it pretty much exists in all of the big major games. Think about it. Fortnite, Battlefield, Overwatch, Overwatch 2, all of these are taking advantage of the loot boxes, i.e. they're taking advantage of you. And you know what? Some authorities have taken notice. Notably, some have raised concerns on this topic. Researchers, consumer protection advocates, even governments in places like Belgium, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom argued in courts that regulatory filings for loot boxes constitute gambling by another name and should be regulated accordingly. Several countries have moved to restrict or ban them outright for minors. Others have continued to study the question. However, today, the debate is live, active, and unresolved, especially in my hometown, the United States of America. God bless the red, white, and blue. Moving on. Diving a little deeper, corporations have developed what my research has called a documented dark pattern. These are essentially interface choices and design elements that do not describe themselves as manipulation, yet function in the most manipulative way possible. A specific anxiety response in our human brain. The fear of missing out. FOMO. And FOMO is really powerful, guys. The fear of missing out makes you think, hey, you know what, this thing is going to end soon. I'm not going to be able to get the item in time. I better buy it now. This is exponentially worse when you're dealing with things like V-Bucks. It's not necessarily real currency to your brain, especially if you're not using your own money. Think about it. A kid using his parents' money has V-Bucks in his account. He's like, oh, okay, this is literally game time. This is literally play money for me. I'm going to spend this thing so I don't miss out on this axe, so I don't miss out on this hat, whatever. It's not real, at least not to the brain. And honestly, the most alarming part, this behavioral data is collected from players and is used to tailor purchasing options and offers that leverage your own psyche against you. So you're not necessarily being shown a deal, you're being shown what you specifically are most likely to buy based on the data. Now, I'm mentioning all this because, of course, first and foremost, you should be aware. Secondly, we need to recognize that the overall goal of these corporations is always going to be money. However, it is being further leveraged in the future, and I think it's affecting not just video games, but media as a whole. It's a sad reality, but when a corporation's revenue depends on not making an extraordinary game, an extraordinary movie, but on extracting continuous spending from a player, from a consumer, then the incentive to create risk diminishes rapidly. I think we can kind of see how today's intellectual properties or IPs are not necessarily original concepts anymore. A genuinely new game with new characters and new worlds are seen as expensive gambles with uncertain payoffs, and this definitely translates into movies as well. And so our media landscape has gradually shifted toward the familiar. Sequels, reboots, remasters, franchise extensions, essentially nothing new. The industry has become in its own way risk adverse. It's exactly what the large entertainment industry has always wanted, something safe. Now, I'm no fool. I know this has been going on for as long as I can remember. It's a tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time.
It's been seen in music, books, film. Gaming is simply living through its own version of this now, but at extraordinary scale. And of course, movies are along for the ride as we are now more connected than ever. And of course, I gotta mention social media, the thing that has essentially dominated our lives over the past couple of decades. Gaming doesn't solely exist in a sealed box anymore. It lives inside the same vast digital ecosystem as social media, streaming services, e-commerce, advertising networks, and I think we can easily see how all of these systems share one fundamental objective: to capture our attention and hold it for as long as possible so that they can translate that into real currency in real time and extract as much data from it as they can. Of course, for us gamers, what does that mean? That we're fed an endless stream of news, gaming reviews, gaming clips, stream highlights, advertisements, trailers, all kinds of things that are fed to us by the algorithm. And the algorithm doesn't distinguish between chosen content, but rather content you were nudged towards. It simply optimizes for your time spent and tries to capitalize on whatever it is that it has shown that you are going to spend money and time on. And now, of course, we're getting shoved content down our throats, so much to the fact that we can't even consume it all like we used to. Nowadays, just having one monitor, one screen is actually seen as kind of quaint. And believe me, I'm definitely guilty of this as well. Even if you don't have a second monitor for computer, you probably have a phone, and while you're watching TV, you're looking at that thing, you're scrolling, you're doing multiple things at once. Essentially, you are feeding the algorithm twice as much at the least. Now, people are capitalizing on this for their own consumption, but of course, corporations are also capitalizing on this in terms of advertisement, engagement, and data tracking. And of course, the bigwigs are recognizing this, and they're saying that, hey, if we want smart money, then we got to own as many of these methods as possible, and we got to feed it directly to the user. But hey, let's get back to Hollywood. Of course, they're looking at gamers, our overall audiences, our loyalty, our global reach, and of course, our wallets. And they're seeing something that they simply can't ignore: opportunity. But very early on, Hollywood learned a very valuable lesson. Gamers aren't like normal audiences. We really involve ourselves into these IPs, and we engross ourselves in the world with which we dedicated so much time to. And what that meant for Hollywood is they simply can't just throw a business strategy at us. They have to offer the most important thing that matters to gamers: respect. And trust me, that's not something they got right away. Let's take a gander at what happened the first time Hollywood tried to turn video games into movies. Let's go all the way back to 1993. The Super Mario Brothers. That's right, the the original, the live action one that has been seen many times over and has been personally my guilty pleasure for as long as I can remember. This bad boy opened up in American theaters on May 28th, 1993. The budget was somewhere around $48 million. Significant money for the time and significant enough to warrant enormous expectations from Nintendo as well as its fans. The beloved plumbers had already sold tens of millions of games worldwide, and the result was one of the most spectacularly misguided films ever made. Rather than the bright, joyful, colorful world of the Mushroom Kingdom, audiences were given a grimy, dystopian city of evolved lizard-esque dinosaurs, a villain named President Koopa.
This guy's name is Koopa.
Thank you.
Played by Dennis Hopper in a suit that looked something like a failed rock music video. Basically an atmosphere that felt less like Mario and more like a fever dream Kiss had after eating a poison mushroom. The film grossed only $21 million domestically and $39 million worldwide. And considering that their budget was over $50 million, that's financially a box office bomb. Bob Hoskins, who played Mario, later called it the worst film of his career. The directors, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, never made another Hollywood feature. Nintendo became so traumatized of the experience that they wouldn't even try another movie for at least another 30 years. But Nintendo's failure and subsequent retreat didn't slow the corpo machine down. The 90s were something of a golden age for video game movie failures, and trust me, they kept pumping out the slop. The second video game attempt, Double Dragon, opened in November 1994 to a domestic total of just $2.3 million after spending over $8 million. Another box office bomb. A slightly more successful movie would come out a little later, Street Fighter, in the same year, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme during arguably his career peak, managed $33 million domestically, but did succeed overseas. Critics gave it no charity whatsoever, however. It has a Metacritic score of 34. Mortal Kombat in 1995 was also added with the rare genuine success of the era. It made $70 million domestically on a budget of $18 million, which made it the exception that proved that the rule could be fueled and the notion that the idea of a video game adaptation could actually work. Now, in 1997, the sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, proved that even a working formula starts to fall apart when the craft and care disappear. $51 million worldwide on a $30 million budget, and reviews so savage they could have been used as weapons. No! Currently has a Metacritic rating of 11. Finish him. And the decade closed with Wing Commander in 1999 based on the beloved space combat series. Budget of $30 million, domestic gross 11.5. It was a quiet disaster that helped bring in the new millennium, which somehow managed to make things even worse before they got better. On deck was Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within. It arrived in 2001 from Square Enix Pictures, the film division of the company behind the legendary role-playing game series. It was a bold, technically groundbreaking production. I remember being in awe of its polygons and graphical prowess at the time. It was truly the first photorealistic computer animated feature film and had a reported budget of $137 million. It earned a measly $32 million in North America, $85 million worldwide, and we can easily see why the production company was shut down as a direct result of the film's failure. But hey, the year also brought Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, the millennia's silver lining, a rare bright spot, riding the star power of Angelina Jolie, who in my opinion was the perfect casting for the pointy adaptation of many gamers' fever dreams, and the movie went on to earn $274 million worldwide on a $150 million budget. A genuine hit and proof that the right star with the right source material could work. However, its sequel, Cradle of Life, earned considerably less and demonstrated that lightning rarely strikes twice in the same franchise without genuine creative investment. A $65 million reward versus a $150 million investment, and honestly, I barely even remember it. Sorry, Laura. Enter the mid-2000s, which belonged largely to one man, director Boll, who somehow obtained the rights to multiple beloved game franchises and produced a string of films so thoroughly dreadful, they're kind of a legacy in terms of awfulness. We got House of the Dead in 2003, Alone in the Dark in 2005, BloodRayne the same year, and despite a cast that included Ben Kingsley, Michael Madsen, and Billy Zane, received 6 Razzie Award nominations. Then we got Doom in 2005, and despite Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Carl Urban doing their professional best, were all box office failures. Now, these failures were not simply because games were cursed or the movie industry tried too hard. It's because they were made without love, they were made without respect for the material, and definitely without any awareness of the audiences they were meant to serve. Now, the following decade produced what I'd like to call the era of mid. Warcraft in 2016 is a fascinating example. Duncan Jones, the son of David Bowie, and arguably a genuinely talented filmmaker, poured himself into this adaptation. The film bombed in the United States. $107 million gross on a $160 million budget. But interestingly enough, particularly in China, this thing was a phenomenon. It eventually totaled $435 million worldwide and landed on the list of highest grossing video game adaptations of all time. The lesson for corporations here? Asia loves Blizzard IPs. Of course, Assassin's Creed came out the same year with Michael Fassbender and Marianne Cotillard, and it was barely a success, nowhere near enough to justify the franchise ambitions behind it. Angry Birds movie appeared in 2016 and surprised everybody by earning $350 million worldwide on a $73 million budget. The movie wasn't necessarily art in my opinion, but it did essentially know that it was family entertainment and essentially it was an app extension. And then the most epic revelation happened. The movie that I believe started to steer the Corpo ship in the right direction. Detective Pikachu opened up in 2019 with Ryan Reynolds voicing our beloved. The film earned over $430 million worldwide and proved that Pokemon was still a cultural phenomenon and could be bankable even in a real-world adaptation. And honestly, I was shocked to see how much of Ryan Reynolds was actually put into the character of Pikachu.
You're adorable. They can't understand me, kid. Can no one else hear him?
And the actor seemed to really enjoy his role, and honestly, it showed on screen and it obviously produced results. Now with this much Pokemon momentum, the year 2020 is where I'd argue the modern era of game adaptations begins. And it begins with a familiar spiky mammal. Sonic the Hedgehog arrived in February 2020, and its origin story is already one of the more remarkable in recent Hollywood history. When the first trailer dropped in May 2019, the response was immediate and overwhelming, but not in a good way. Sonic's initial design was so fangoriously awful, I hope the original designer got the rings knocked out of him. Sonic is supposed to be this short, cartoony, almost cute yet serious character with enough flair and pizzazz to speed through speedways and launch out of the screen. What we got was this skinny humanoid freak with teeth that just made you cringe at the sight of it.
Meow.
Honestly, it was a huge middle finger to fans and even casuals. The public outcry was legendary. And honestly, what the studio did next was unusual and maybe even unheard of. They listened to us, the gamer, the consumer. So the studio swallowed their pride, they pulled the trailer, they alerted the fan base, and they spent millions of dollars reworking the character design. They delayed the film, and it ended up being a massive success, fueled by both the controversy and the overall quality of the film. Drew Carey, who played Robotnik, absolutely knocked his performance out of the park and honestly carried the entire cast.
Give me a big fat break!
It earned $320 million worldwide. Its sequel in 2022 earned $404 million, surpassing the original. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 came out in December 2024, adding Keanu Reeves as Shadow, and provided unmatched meme potential. It earned $490 million. Substantial success stories for the industry, and solidified Sonic as an overall content giant. And of course, we got Uncharted, which debuted in 2022, starring Tom Holland as a young Nathan Drake. It earned about $400 million globally and established itself as a solid, if kind of unspectacular franchise starter. Still not bad, but the impressive numbers of early 2020s were about to be dwarfed. Nintendo, still understandably suffering from their trauma back in 1993, still couldn't ignore the numbers that were being produced by their other video game counterparts. So they decided to take another thwomp at it. And in April of 2023, the Super Mario Bros. Movie officially opened in theaters. And in this case, I think that the production history matters here. Nintendo's legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto was closely involved in the creative process, ensuring that the film honored not just the plot mechanics of the games, but their spirit, the joy, the color, the warmth. He ensured that the sense of wonder was present in the movie just like it is in the game. You know, the thing that actually made us fall in love with the characters, the world, and made us pick up that controller time and time again. There were no drastic deviations or soulless artistic liberties. We didn't have any lizard leather. We weren't talking about presidents. Everything was game specific, and it was recognizable to anybody that picked up that controller and played any one of the many games that have ever come out. The dedication to the source material in conjunction with the star-studded cast absolutely launched this thing into the stratosphere. With the budget being around $100 million, the opportunity that Nintendo and Illumination took home was a box office result of $1.4 billion That's billion with a B. This absolutely solidified Mario as the highest grossing video game adaptation in history up to that point. The success really chummed the waters for corporations, and another frenzy was about to start. But of course, the industry did experience a couple of speed bumps along the way. Borderlands in 2024 was a production with a star-studded cast and a budget that ballooned to around 115 million. It had a huge marketing campaign and generated enormous awareness, but it just earned $33 million worldwide. Investors lost close to $100 million. It was a stark reminder that familiarity with the brand is never by itself enough. Also, does Kevin Hart ever refuse a role? Now, whatever damage Borderlands didn't last long, as the Mario movie was about to be challenged in terms of gross. The Minecraft movie came out in 2025 and it starred Jack Black, Jason Momoa, and the film went on to gross over $900 million worldwide and became the highest grossing film of 2025. It arrived at a moment when the box office was particularly struggling, especially behind pre-pandemic 2019 levels, and it happened in a matter of 2 weekends. And then, most notably, very recently actually, we have the ultimate game changer. The movie Iron Lung. The movie actually released earlier this year in January, and it absolutely rocked the corpo world. This movie was solely produced and starred in by Mark Fishbach, known online as Markiplier. Now, I'm sure many of you know who this guy is, of course, but for those of you who don't, Markiplier is a YouTuber, one of the biggest ones in history actually, who has over 37 million subscribers, and he built his fan base playing video games, making reaction content, and honestly, he connects with his audience in a way that is kind of genuine and unusually warm for an online personality. No, he didn't grow up in Hollywood. He didn't go to film school. He built his entire career in front of a camera in his own space, talking directly to people who chose to watch him. Mad respect. Now, for context, in 2022, an independent horror game called Iron Lung was released by a solo developer named David Szymanski. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. The game cost $3 whole. It placed you inside a submarine submerged in a sea of blood on a moon of a distant planet. It was terrifying, minimalist, and deeply original. Exactly the kind of thing that does not get made inside a large studio, at least not nowadays. Markiplier played it on his channel, and the rest is history. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the man made this movie himself. He wrote it himself, he directed it himself, he started in it himself almost as the sole on-screen performer for nearly the entire film. His passion on screen is beyond palpable. It oozes similarly to the blood within that submarine. The man financed the movie himself with $3 million from his own pocket. He tried taking it to the studios, but they passed. Every single one of them. He even mentions in an article that an executive even laughed in his face. And although he was popular online to Hollywood, he was essentially a nobody. But of course, history always remembers the victors. Hollywood believes that the only films worth betting on are the ones with multi-million-dollar deals and absolutely star-studded casts, but guess what? It fucking blasted through the stratosphere in terms of box office success. Again, this movie cost $3 million, but today it's made over $50 million, and it's just getting started. That's a huge return. The man took a risk for all of us, honestly, and it paid off. We, the consumers, the gamers, showed Hollywood that we care about passion and execution, not just notoriety and budget. I believe this example will open the door for future ventures, new IPs, and open up a new industry as long as we, the gamer, the consumer, continue to support risk takers and not just this risk aversion slop. We need to remind Hollywood that we care about the feeling of these universes, the unique experiences of an IP, the overall world, its characters, all of the aspects that make people fall in love with their games in the first place. Get that right and all audiences will follow. Get it wrong and no amount of marketing is going to save you. So, all that being said, what does the future look like? Well, on April 1st, 2026, mere days from now, Super Mario Galaxy movie is going to open up in theaters. And given that its predecessor earned stupid money, it arrives with expectations so enormous they could collapse a star. The main cast is returning, the animation is bigger, and Yoshi, who was teased in the first film, is finally playing a major role alongside Mario, Luigi, and the rest of the gang. And just look at him, he's so fucking cute. Now, I'll admit, I'm a little bit biased, but his animation and the detail to his character is spot on. And honestly, I'd argue at this date and time, Nintendo has never been more commercially potent than this exact moment in history. And of course, theater chains have responded to this momentum with a merchandise rollout that I would consider to be the most elaborate collectible offering in modern movie theater history. Now, there are many items available, but at the center is the Yoshi popcorn bucket. Yoshi is rendered in a full character plastic novelty excellence. He's got the shoes, the shell, the big eyes. He's awesome. Oh, and his egg holds 105 ounces of buttery popcorn. And yeah, I secured one for myself. Now, I was gonna wait till the actual release of the movie, but once I went to go see the Demon Slayer movie recently and the cashier told me that these things were running out, I had to snag one. I just had to. And this thing is setting history, as it is one of the few items in theater collectible history to be shared broadly across all competing chains simultaneously. You can get this thing at any movie theater. However, it is $50 and it did set me back quite a bit. Now, of course, for me, this thing was worth it. It's a beautifully made functional object. I truly don't think it's collectors that'll appreciate this alone. You know, if you're gonna have somebody in your life that you love that's gonna light up whenever they see it, there is nothing inherently wrong with buying one. Joy is real and things that bring us joy have value. But is it egregiously pricey? Yeah. Is it greedy? Oh yeah. Like, wow, $50? It's freaking hollow plastic. But I do want to address the overall effect clearly. Let's compare this thing to its predecessor. It launched with a couple of themed cups, a tin, pretty much everything that a movie theater has been selling since the 1980s. Rudimentary stuff, following the motions, soulless crap. But in just a few short years, gamers, the consumer, showed with our wallets that we care about franchises that give us direct respect. Respect to the franchise, respect to the games, respect to the source material. The symbiotic relationship that gamers in Hollywood has now established has come from a long lesson of, hey, you gotta respect what you're doing and you gotta respect the people that you're trying to make it for. We're not just gonna eat slop and you're not gonna win every time with just marketing alone. Gamers are among the most passionate, most engaged, and most loyal consumer communities on earth. We don't simply consume the content, we analyze it, we debate it, we create our own content around it, and we even form communities and friendships, all within a world that is built with ones and zeros. And oftentimes our emotional investment, it lasts for life. So I'm here to challenge you guys, and even myself, to continue to support IPs that are done right. And more importantly, probably most importantly, we have to support brand new ideas, brand new IPs that are done well from people that we don't know. The next Mario, the next Sonic, the new Nathan Drake, they're out there brewing in someone's basement, in a college dorm, maybe even on an iPhone. And of course, don't forget, whenever you do find that new IP or a really well done franchise, make sure to share it with somebody that you love. Let the film be the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. If your loved ones are deep inside a game world you don't understand, find the film adaptation and watch it with them. Not to pander, but out of genuine curiosity. Ask them questions about what they love about the game. Let them be the expert. Or maybe even better, seek out something new together. Engross yourself at the same time. Be on the same playing field. Leverage media as the bridge that helps bring people closer to you, and vice versa. I believe we have a responsibility to invest in the future of an art form we love and not just cater to repeated slop. The controller, in every sense that matters, is still in our hands. Power to the players. And well, that's it for me, guys. I'm officially sticking a fork in this one. Oh, and if you liked what you saw, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye-bye.